Kuppusamy is an assistant professor in the Department of CSE School of Engineering and Technology, Pondicherry University, Pondicherry. His research interest includes accessible computing, human computer interaction, machine learning. He has published 85 plus papers in indexed international journals, international conferences, and technical magazines. His articles are published by reputed publishers such as Oxford University Press, Elsevier, Springer, Taylor, and Francis World Scientific, Emerald, and EFI. He is in the recipient of Best Teacher Award from Pondicherry University for 6 times. He is serving as the counselor for persons with disabilities at HEPS and Enabling Unit, Pondicherry University. Here we have Dr. K.S. Kuppusamy sir to present on the topic Data Analytics Do It Yourself with Open Source Tools. Welcome you, sir. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Can you enable me to share my screen? I'm not able to see the share option.
Speak, sir, is presented.
Yeah, because share option is not. Yeah, yes.
Yes, sir, I shared.
Yeah. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Clear? Yeah. So good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Akhila ma'am for giving me this chance to interact with you all, and to the NIT Pondicherry administration as well for providing this opportunity to interact with you all. So it's a happy moment to meet Madam once again, because whatever I have done in my research career, the credit all goes to Akhila ma'am. I got an opportunity to work with Madam, and I learned the advances of research, everything from ma'am only. Thank you very much for that, ma'am. And now we go on to the current session. So let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So just a minute. This icons everywhere is just blocking the view. So how do I move it from here? So my topic is on data analytics with Julia. So for the last few days, you have been listening about lot of things with respect to the data analytics and data science, and how to do with the how to do various things in data analytics using Python and R, etc. So today, I think this is the last day of this workshop, and I thought that it will be better that we get introduced to another new dimension of doing this task into a fresh programming language called Julia. So my session, the learning objective for this session is like this: to get you introduced with Julia, and why we have to get accustomed with Julia programming language, and what Julia offers to a data scientist, and what are all the different things that we can do through the Julia thing, and why we have to go for it, what are all the advantages of this thing. So this session primarily has various components. First we will go through presentation slides, where I will be giving you kind of ideas on what are all the various different features of Julia programming language. Then how to do the Julia data science, like how to handle the data frames, how to do the visualization in the Julia, and we will also see a small machine learning model of how to classify images with Julia, etc. So there are so this will be like a new approach that you will be adding it to your kit. Where if you want to become a data scientist, Julia will also be helpful for you. Right. So let's start with a question. So how many programming languages are there in your guess? Just make a random guess. How many programming languages might be there? Are you able to hear me? Dinesh Dinakaran is saying 15. I've got only two answers. More than 15, more than 20. Okay, so then let me do a small, let us all do a small task now. So what we are going to do is, just a minute. So in your system, you are all accessing this through your laptop or mobile phones. Go to this site menti.com. Go to this site menti.com. Just type in your browser menti.com and enter this code, whatever the code that you are seeing here, 5760 04 5760 0495. Just go to menti.com and enter this code. You will be getting a screen. There you just enter the names of the programming languages that you know. Names of the programming languages that you know. Just see how many programming languages we are able to find out. As you update there, the programming language name will start appearing over here. Let's see how many different names that we are getting. Are you getting the point what I am trying to say? Let's see when we get the answer. Go to menti.com. This is the URL. And this is the code. Type just the names of the programming languages that you know. Are you doing it? Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir. We are doing it, sir.
Yeah. Let's see how many names that we are getting. It will be like an interactive tool. If you are a teacher, you can also pick up a point from this session. You can use this Mentimeter as a tool to get interactive sessions with your students when you are conducting classes in the remote learning method. But I don't know why this much time you people are taking on this. Have you typed the result there into Mentimeter? Okay, now you can see here.
Participants said there are no results displayed.
Yeah. I'll come back. Just a minute. So have you typed something there?
Yes, sir, we have typed.
Yeah, let me just see. There is something. Okay, so these are all the things that you have typed, right? Somebody has typed their own name. I asked about to type the name of the programming languages. Okay, you typed about Java, Python. So this is one tool that you can use, as I already said. So as the students type over there, you will be able to get it. You can also see here how many people have responded. I can see here only 9 people have responded with this thing. Okay, you have typed so many different names. You have typed about Python, you have typed about R, C, Java, PHP, Lisp, Python, C Sharp, like that. So many different programming languages you have typed. So any one of you attending this talk, have you heard about this programming language called Julia? You can reply in the chat box. Okay, Ravi Chandra says he has heard about Julia. Balayogi might be knowing. He is my scholar. Okay, so many of you have not heard about Julia. So this session is going to give you an idea on what Julia is and why we have to focus on. Coming back to the first question that I asked, how many programming languages are there? Wikipedia has listed about 700 programming languages are there, including some esoteric programming languages. Esoteric programming languages are those which are created for some extraordinary purposes or some fun purposes, etc. But it is not, it is as per the Wikipedia's definition, there are around 700 programming languages are there. But there are like sources which says that the programming language count can go up to 9,000 programming languages are there as per the HPOPL list. So that means to say that there are so many number of programming languages which are already available. So as you have said, for this workshop itself, you have been already studying about Python, you have got introduced with R, etc. Then, so there will be a question. So why another programming language? Why we need another programming language? What is the need for going for another programming language for doing this stuff? Why not we stick to our existing programming languages itself and do everything with the existing programming language itself? There is an answer to this question. Anybody want to answer that question? Why there are so many number of programming languages are there in your opinion?
So the simplicity to solve a
Simplicity to solve a problem. Okay, very good. Then what are all the other reasons? Why there are so many programming languages are there? Why not say 1 or 2 programming languages would be enough? No, why we have got like okay, even though the list is like 700 programming languages, almost the list of programming languages that you people typed, there itself it was like you had got lot of programming languages that you have typed, say 20-25 programming languages names. So in chat box, I think I'm getting the answer. So updation of features, facility provided by one programming language might not be available in other. Okay. So the answer to this question is this. Every programming language is created for a purpose. And apart from very few programming languages where they are general purpose programming languages, every other programming language is intended with the idea of solving some particular problems. Say for example, if you take PHP, this is related to server side programming. Say for example, if you take R, that is mostly related with the statistics, right? If you go for CSS, that is related to cascaded style sheet, adding styles to the web pages. Now, why new programming languages are coming is, with the existing programming languages, there are some lacuna, or the problems can still be solved in a much better way. What is the need for yet another programming language? There are still need for a lot of programming languages, because still there are problems that are existing in the current programming languages, whatever that we are using. So there is always a need for developing a new programming language. So Julia is a new programming language which is a open source programming language, and it has come with the see, now listen carefully. I'm going to tell you the most important point of this particular lecture is there are primarily two types of programming languages are there. One programming language which will be working very fast. The program that you write in that particular programming languages, they will run very fast, but the development speed will be very slow. Say for example, if you take a programming language like C, the output of this programming language is so fascinating that the programs that you write in C programming language will execute at an optimal speed. But as a developer, you have to put lot of efforts to build that program. On the other hand, there are some programming languages in which you can build the program so easily, but the output that it creates will not be optimal. For example, if you take a programming language like Visual Basic, for example, it will be very easy for you to build the programs using Visual Basic. At the same time, when you see the output that has been created by Visual Basic programming language, the output will not be that much optimal. I hope you are able to understand what I am saying, right? Are you able to understand my point? Are you getting the point what I am trying to say?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the point is that there is a fundamental conundrum in the programming domain which says that one set of programming languages are there which are very easy to develop the programs, but the code they build will not be very effective, will not be as effective as the best programming language. Even if you take Python, for example, Python has become like a programming language of the scientific community of late. There is talk about Python everywhere, and then everybody have started using Python, like how Fortran was there in one point in time. Now Python has taken up that space. And why Python has become so powerful is that the code that you write in Python is so easy that that it is like walk in the park to build the code in Python. But there is one criticism about Python, that whether the code that the Python build is optimal. Will it be running as fast as the code that you build in C programming language or Fortran programming language, for example? That will not be the case. In building the programs in Python is so easy, but the output that the Python generates will not be as optimal as if the same code is built using C programming language. How do we solve this problem? There was this gap. Addressing this gap only, this new programming language which got evolved, and that programming language is what we call it as Julia. Julia is a programming language which tries to bridge the best of both these worlds. Like it has to take the best of the Python world as well as the best of the C programming world, so that it will be like giving you the better result. In Python itself, you might have seen sometimes we will be putting some packages like Cython, etc., the C Python, etc., wherein we want to something like make it better, or we want to use the C related features, etc. We will be going for the that kind of packages. These are all some of the efforts to make the Python code faster and faster. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to destroy the efficiency of the Python. Python is a wonderful programming language. For most of my research work also, I use Python. Along with it, we also incorporate Julia as well wherever it is possible. So it is not that we are going to replace Python with Julia. That is not the point. So the Julia creators, they themselves have answered this question. The first objective why they wanted to build a programming languages, they wanted to build a open source programming languages. Python is open source, so that box is ticking there also. But they want the speed of C programming language. At the same time, they wanted the dynamism of the Ruby programming language, and with the powerful macros like Lisp, and with the mathematical notations that are there in MATLAB. So MATLAB has got certain advantages, Python has got certain advantages, and R has got certain advantages, and then they wanted to build a programming language which will be simple to learn. At the same time, the code that you build will be very, very powerful also. So that is where the Julia programming language was started. The Julia programming language is considered to be, it's a language of technical computing, they call it, because as you see throughout this session, Julia comes up with a lot of features and packages that makes our life very simple. It is not that to write the optimized code we are going to break our head. As I already said, if you want to go by that route, you can obviously use the C programming itself, because you are going to do everything on your own. Then you can write it in C programming itself. But then we want to write the code as easy as Python, at the same time as powerful as C programming language. This is what is the basic conundrum that I was explaining you so far. Execution speed versus the development ease. How quickly the programs will execute, how fast we can make the development. Most of the time they are inversely proportional to each other. So here in this case, we wanted to build a programming language where we wanted to have a programming language where it will be taking the best of both these worlds. So there is this language, there is a popular saying which says that Julia is a programming language that walks like Python and runs like C. So that is the that one line which tells you that the core of the Julia programming language. This is an article that I wrote for Open Source for You magazine. I hope many of you would have read the Open Source for You magazine. I will share all the articles that what I have written about Julia with you at the end of this session. If you have a mail ID, just share with me. I will mail group or something. I will just share with you so that you can go through all these articles also. So Julia is a programming language that walks like Python and runs like C. So that is the fundamental understanding on which we are approaching the Julia programming language. Right. So Julia was initially developed during 2012. It is from MIT, and four major developers behind the brain of Julia. They are Jeff Bezanson, Stephen Karpinski, and Viral Shah, and Alan Edelman. You can see that from this name Viral Shah, you might have identified that he is a person of Indian origin. So he is an Indian. So we can also be proud about it. The current version of Julia is as of 24th August, that is 2 days back. The Julia version 1.6.2 is there. So Julia has been becoming very popular among the community. Though I asked you a question, how many of you know about Julia? Only very few people raised their hand. But if you see that there are a lot of Western universities which have got adopted to the Julia, they can see that more than 1,500 universities have started using Julia already. But we, as I feel that we in our academic curriculums also, we have to start introducing this kind of programming languages also to the students. So this lecture or this session will be like a starting point for that thing. At the end of this lecture, I cannot make you a Julia expert, but what is the thing that I am trying to do is, you will be having some take-home points on Julia, and you can further continue on that, like how you can develop the code, where you can adopt Julia, and I will also share some resources from where you can further build on. These are all the four people who worked on the Julia, and they were awarded the Wilkinson Prize, which was considered to be one of the important award. And you can see here Viral Shah. He is now the CEO of the Julia computing thing. He is very much active in Twitter and other forums. You can follow him. He constantly updates on Julia, and there is a JuliaCon which is going on every year, which is running on the virtual mode. I think recently it got concluded, JuliaCon 2021, where researchers across the various domains, they come and share their experience on how they are developing they are adopting Julia for their purposes. So far what I have told you is, we are now exploring a new programming language which is open source, which is easier to learn. At the same time, it creates a very effective code also. This is the gist of whatever I told to you so far.
So we have a question in chat box.
Yeah. I'm coming to that. What is the difference between Python and Julia? Yeah, I will come to that. So the features of Julia is the basic features of Julia is like that. It is open source, and it has got multi-platform support. And Julia is primarily based on a LLVM, which is a low-level virtual machine-based JIT compiler, just-in-time compiler is being used with the Julia, and that is what makes Julia code to run faster. It is one of the primary differences between Julia and Python. And before I actually go further, I don't want to create a scenario like it is Julia versus Python. It is not like that. Over a period of time, what now the scientific community have understood is that, the technical community have understood is that, we are not going to replace the Python completely. Python will be there, and Julia will be like specifically used in certain scenarios where you are going for computation intensive task, etc. As it is based on the JIT compiler, which is based on an LLVM, low level virtual machine. First time when you run the code, Julia code, it might take a slight a bit of time, so that the code will be optimized, the optimal machine code will be created, assembly code will be created, so that later on if you run, whenever you are running, that code will be running very faster. So Python mostly like we go with interpreter based approach. So here we are having the LLVM based JIT compiler, and there are many similarities also, and we can also use Python code also in Julia. That means that there are some packages which are called PyCall, through which what we can do is we can call a Python code into Julia. Similarly, some of the Julia modules we can work with Python, like that. Julia calling Python, Python calling Julia, like that. There are a lot of libraries are there. So it has been a very effective programming language for many communities, that they have already started using it. So let's explore. So these are all the features that that makes the Julia as one of the very important programming language. Julia is very fast, as you see. That has been, I have been always talking about, because Julia programs compiles to very efficient native code that's created via the LLVM. That is, when you are running in a Windows machine, it creates a native code which is very much optimized for, say for example, whatever microprocessor is there in that particular machine, whatever environment that are there in the particular machine. So the native code that is been built, that is been created, will be very effective and very efficient, so that builds that makes the Julia code very fast. As also it is a dynamically typed programming language. It feels like a scripting language only. As I told, we are going to also see the live demo of the Julia code. So I'm just trying to explain you first to get introduced with what are all the different things that are there in Julia. Of course, it has also got the optional typing feature. If you want, you can have the typing. Otherwise, you can just leave it. It is very easy to use. It comes with the MIT license, or free for everyone to use. All the source code is publicly available via GitHub, so you can also become a contributor if you are very well versed in writing code, etc. You can also build your own packages, and you can upload to Julia repository also, if the community is ready to accept that thing. So first thing first, how do you get started with Julia? Julia can be installed in any computer which is basically running Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. In any of the computers, you will be able to install Julia. You can directly download Julia from julialong.org website. So there you can go there, and then you can download the Julia from there. So let me just show you from there how it looks like. So you can see here, there are current stable releases that are available for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and there are Linux. You can also get it on Linux on x86, Linux on ARM, Linux on PowerPC. Generic free BSD code, everything is available. Both 62-bit, 64-bit, and 32-bit installers are also available on this thing. You can, the installation is so easy. You can just download this this installer, and you can execute the installer, and the installation will be ready. There will not be much problems in installing the installing this particular code. You can directly get the installation from here. So if you are a Mac OS user, you can download the DMG file, and you can download it also. So mostly we use the Linux systems for building the code. But for this session, I thought with WebEx there might be some issues showing the because sometimes WebEx creates some problem with the the Linux environment. So I thought I will show you from Windows. So I have been showing this the Windows. In my Windows system, I installed this Julia and everything for this workshop. Otherwise, we use it in Linux. All our code base, everything we do it in from Linux. Okay, so how you can write your code in Julia? There are 4 basic methods through which you can write the code in Julia. The first method is you can go with the REPL based approach, which is the read, evaluate and print loop. Once you install Julia, you will get the Julia REPL. REPL is like the interactive prompt where you can write your code. Let me just show you a Julia REPL. I think I have got Julia REPL here. Yeah, this is how the Julia REPL looks like. So once you open Julia, you can see here it shows this Julia icon, and then it shows the version, whatever the version 1.6.2, whatever it is there, it has been showing here. And this looks like your Python REPL, right? So you can see here. Let me come here. So you can see here. So simply you can type some values here. So you can, as you do in Python, this thing. This is from the Julia prompt, what we call as the Julia REPL. Julia REPL is read, evaluate, and print loop. The command line prompt is what nowadays people are calling like the REPL, the read, evaluate, and print loop. Then the next method is to go with Jupyter. You know that for the previous classes also you might have used Jupyter, right? I think all of you might be comfortable using Jupyter, isn't it? Do you have idea on using Jupyter?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Jupyter Notebook you're already using, right? So in the Jupyter, the name itself, you can see that what is the expansion for the Jupyter thing? Why it is called Jupyter? The Jupyter is Julia, Python and R. So that's how it's been given the name. So the first 2 letters JU itself is Julia, then you have PY, and then you have got PYT Python, and then you have got R also. So you have got you can work with Jupyter also. The code that I am going to show you, we will be going by the Jupyter method. Then we also have an online based Julia interpreters also there. There is something called Try Julia, which you can directly do it from online itself. So you can go to Julia Long demo, and then there will be an online version. So inside the browser itself, you will be able to work with the Julia. That is called online tools. There are other approaches also like Julia Box, etc., where you can without installing, you can try some of the things, but that won't have all the features. I will encourage you to install it in your system, and then because now we have only a short time, I'm not telling you to install it now and then wait for that time. So I will just share all the materials at the end of this session with you all, so that you can further practice those things also. So the next method is to go with an IDE. So there is a popular IDE called Juno IDE. Through Juno IDE also we can use Julia. But now, as of 2021, the recent trend is that for VS Code there is a Julia extension. I think many of you might be using the Visual Studio Code. So through Visual Studio Code also, what we can do is we can link the Julia along with the Visual Studio Code. So through that also we will be able to use the Julia. So that is called the Juno IDE, or through terminal also we can use. We can write we can write the program in any of the notepad, or any of the text editors like Sublime Text or something. Then we can come to the terminal and write Julia, name of the program.jl. That is what is the extension with which the code is saved. So you can run it like that also, like how you run the Python. So these are all the different methods in which we can. So this is through the REPL in which we work. Then this is the Julia which is running inside the browser. So if you are very much interested after this session, what you can do is you can right away enter into this julialong.org/learning/try Julia. So once you go there, you will get a screen like this where you can start entering the code directly, and the code will be running from here itself. This is for preliminary getting introduction with Julia like that. You can use it here. This is with the Jupyter. You can add an iJulia package, and then you can get this Jupyter screen like this. So through this also you will be able to use the Julia. This is a Juno IDE, which is a very flexible IDE for using the using Julia. But now, recently, what the Julia community has decided is that instead of going with a separate IDE, now they have thought that it is better that with the existing open source IDEs like VS Code, etc., where we can just integrate Juno as Julia as a package, Julia support as a package, so that it will be very easy for the developers not to shift it to something totally new. This is through the Julia REPL. So Julia ecosystem, now we are going to talk a little bit about the Julia ecosystem. In the Julia ecosystem, you have got like Julia support for all these major types of things. You can perform powerful visualizations using Julia. You can also use Julia for general purpose code. As I already told to you, Julia can allow you to write UIs which can deploy it on a web server, etc. Or you can also call the C Python code through the Julia code, or you can also use Julia for data science. You can work with the you can interact with your data, and in interacting with the data, we have got a powerful thing which is called data frames, and we are going to see how what different things that we can do with the data frames in this session. So we can also perform machine learning related task in Julia. We have got something called flux.jl, knet.jl, and MLJ. There are many different frameworks that are available in many different packages that are available, so that we can get started with the Julia code right away. You don't need to break your head for starting from the scratch. You don't need to do everything. And Julia is particularly used in rich scientific domains. If you are coming from a mathematics domain, so if you need a very specific task like a numerical computing, etc., you have got differential equations.jl, and then when you are going with optimization tools, etc., we have got optim.jl. Likewise, there are lots and lots of libraries are available, packages are available. Similarly, if you are working with the images, you can use Julia images. And then if you are from quantum physics, then this one is also becoming very popular. I have interacted with the people who are totally unrelated to computer science, and like people from physics department, etc. They have started using Julia. Particularly, two major communities, as I see, or three major communities, I can say. One is BioJulia, which is the biological projects where they require lots of computation intensive tasks. There they use Julia, where you got lot of biological packages are also available. And another one is the quantitative economics people, where there are a lot of people in the quantitative economics domain, where they are using the Julia. And another domain is the quantum physics people, where they are using. What I am trying to tell you is, why I am telling you all these things is, if a language is so difficult to pick up, like if you take like a VC++ kind of a language, where the learning curve itself is very steep, then it will not have become so popular among various other domains people, like the people from other domains, like the physics domain and the biological domain, etc., even the economics domain. There are particular conferences that are getting organized now on the quantitative economics with Julia. Like that, there are conferences and workshops they offer for this thing. So for parallelism is another important advantage of Julia. If you are having say for example a powerful GPUs, etc., in your system, Julia can just take the full potential of the parallel computing facility that you are having. So this is another advantage how Julia is different from the Python also. Python also has the parallelism, some sort of abilities, but the abilities of Julia to work with the parallel code is what they call as the instruction level parallelism. and the multi-threading and distributed computing for all these different kinds of things. You have got the Julia's ecosystem that supports all these different types of things. Julia, as I said, it has got so many different packages. Over 3,000 different Julia packages are there, and they have been downloaded 13 million times. Why I am emphasizing on all these numbers is, it is not that it is something that has been coming only now, and we don't know whether it is going to work out or not. It has already become so popular among a large section of the people, but we should not lag behind in using that particular programming language also. So that is what I am trying to emphasize. So more and more people are also building their own packages as well. So these are all some how do you know about the package management status, etc. So this is about the Julia Eco system that we have. Julia Observer, you can go and then you can see what are all the different libraries that are there for performing tasks with each of these things. So let me show you here. So you can come to Julia Observer, and then through the Julia Observer, you can see what are all the different packages that are there in Julia. You can see here, it's been already categorized into different categories. You can notice down here. All these different categories are there. Say, for example, if you see data science as a category, you have got all these different types of packages that are there with the Julia. Similarly, you've got packages available for everything, right? You've got machine learning packages. You've got packages that are available across different kinds of domains. Say, if you even go with the supercomputing, there are some specific packages that are available which will accelerate the parallel computing, and which will be able to generate the CUDA native code, etc. And similarly, you've got packages that are supporting various different domains. Say genomics, there are packages that are there. Similarly, for NLP, there are packages are there. So you name anything, and there is a package which is already available. Particularly these economics and finance people, they have already started using Julia in some of the universities. I have seen that there are even papers that have got published along with the Julia code, that how it is very different from the other implementation, how they get better advantages on utilizing the Julia code for their research. Particularly for AI, there are many of the codes that got optimized after it has come to production level, where say there is one company which has given their report that when they are building a scanner, an image scanner, when the code got ported to Julia from an existing programming language, they were able to get even 10 times more performance than what was already existing over there. So it's all to try that it's all to say that Julia is a very powerful programming language. Don't get me wrong, I am not marketing for Julia. What I am trying to say is, there is a programming language like this. We can also explore that programming language. Okay, now we are into the Julia RPL now. Jupyter Notebook now. You can see here it is running on the Julia kernel 1.6.2. Like for Python program, you might have selected the kernel here, Python kernel. Here now I have got Julia kernel here. So from this now we are going to see what are all the different things that you will be able to do it here. So first let me show you how to get the version info. So you run anything with a shift enter, you will be able to run it. I think in the previous classes itself, you might have got introduced to Jupyter, isn't it? You already know the shortcuts of Jupyter, etc. No? Are you listening to me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So sometimes you have to respond, then only I will be knowing. No. So how do you? How do you find out the version info with respect to the Julia? Is the first command, as you can see here. So I will make it a little bit bigger so that it will be easy for you to see. So it shows that Julia version 1.6.2 platform is OS Windows. What is the message that it is showing, and also the lib LLVM, the library LLVM, low level virtual machine. What is the version that we are using? So then you want to get help about anything. So you have to simply say a question mark, and then type that name anything. Say for example, if you want to know about the cost function, so just see type this, and you can see here it actually gives you a code example also. It also gives you like what are all the things, what is the thing with respect to this particular function, and what is its input, and what type of data that it is taking, and then the example code whatever is available, that is also shown here. And okay, so we are going one by one. So how do we make the first thing like hello world? So the very simple print statement, what you are doing in other programming languages, the same thing. So you don't need to go with like any complicated syntax for printing anything. So just say print hello world. That's it. The output will be printed. There is a story behind hello world also. I don't want to take your time by explaining the story. If you are interested, you can just search after this session. Why for every programming language we are using the hello world as one of the first program that we write. There is a hello world story. How this culture of hello world came into our programming language domain, you can explore further after the session get over. Now don't go to the search engine and start searching for that one. There is a styled print statement which is called print styled. So when you are having a print styled, you can also give you the color, like in what color you want to give the print. So here we have given print styled A color colon blue. That means that the color equal to colon blue. That means that it is it's now, you can see here now the output is coming in blue color. So if you change it to some other thing, so you can see here now the output is coming in that particular color. So how do you get the input again? So input can be get with the help of read line function. You can get the input by using any variable is equal to read line. Now I execute this program. You can see here through the std in, it is just getting the input. I just type this thing, so you are getting the output here. So for getting the input, you have got read line. For printing the output, you have got print statement. So very basic thing, right? Now, showing you the power of the Julia. So there is something called peak flops. I think you might be knowing that what is meant by a flop, isn't it? What is meant by a flop? There is a keyword called flop, right? What does a flop means? Anyone knows what is a flop means? Here itself I have given, in the slide itself I have given. Flop stands for floating point operations per second. That is per second how many floating point operations that the Julia can perform. Now you see here. Now this is the outcome that you can see that in this computer currently the floating point operations that can be performed is 7.969 into e to the power 10. This many number of floating point operations can be performed using Julia in this computer. This is not a simple instruction level operation. These are all the floating point operations that can be performed. So peak flop tells you that how powerful. I will also show you by generating some random numbers how quickly Julia is able to generate those random numbers and creating the output with that particular random numbers also. Now come to some simple mathematical operations. So for assignment operations, you know that simply a variable can be assigned to a value by giving the variable name and then value. So you can also assign multiple values like this. You can see here. Now x comma y is equal to 10 comma 20. 10 will be assigned to x. 20 will be assigned to y. You can see the output like this. You can also perform even more compact syntax like this. X comma y comma z is equal to 10, and here you are assigning one number. Here you are you can see here you are assigning this one. You can see here 1 to 10 kind of an array that you are assigning here. Then you are having a string that you have been assigning it over here. So all these things can be assigned like this. There are a lot of mathematical, arithmetic operations, etc. are there. My intention is not to teach you like every assignment operation will be performing this thing, that thing. That is not the task. I will just show you something as a sample that you can see. Say there is a backslash operation in Julia which is performing the inverse division operation. What is the inverse division is generally, you can see here 4 inverse division 8. 8 will be now divided by 4. This is called inverse division. For performing the inverse division, you can just use the this kind of an operation. This is the backslash operation. Then for all element-wise operations, you can perform dot and then the operator. Now you have got you got this set of numbers here, and you want to perform the element-wise operation. Like each number should be added to 5. You can do it like this. You can see here. Now 1 plus 5 is 6, 2 plus 5 is 7, 3 plus 5 is 8. Like that, we have added each number with a 5. Then you can also perform chaining. That means that multiple operations can be combined together. You can see here x is equal to y is equal to z is equal to 5. Then we have also performed a checking of operation here. So it's finally throwing you the outcome. So this is the multiplication, exponentiation, and all. I don't want to even run that thing. Now, how do you write a first function in your Julia code? Now let's see here. So when you want to define a function, you use the keyword function and then name of the function, whatever the name of the function, then the argument that you are going to specify it here. Then you have a return statement. You can see here, add one generic function has been. These are all generic function. That means that you can see here, add one of 7. It can be executed like this also. So function definition is so easy. Just you have to use the keyword function, and then you need to provide the name of the function. That's it. And inside that you can just give the argument. Argument can be like 1 argument, 2 argument, with argument, without argument. All these things are allowed. So those things are self-explanatory for you. Now, as Julia is a scientific computing based programming language, you can also directly use LaTeX symbols also into the code. Say for example, now you can see, I want to put something like this, alpha. I'm just putting backslash alpha, and then a tab I am typing, then I am putting equal. Now this itself can be used like a variable. That is the point. Now you can see here. How do I type this is? Like a LaTeX symbol, alpha. Now you can see alpha is equal to alpha star 10 that I have given. You suppose when you are converting, you are writing a research paper, and then you are converting the program. What you can do is you can directly use the same symbols. What did you use in your algorithms? The same symbol can be directly used here in the code also. That is where you can use the LaTeX symbol. There are already predefined symbols are also available. Say for example, I will just show you here. Say if I simply say pi, this will be like already the pi value is by default stored. So when you are trying to compute something, say for example, so you have to simply say now so you are computing the area of the circle pi r square like this. So in the code itself you can directly use the Unicode. Any Unicode symbol can be used here. This is not the Unicode symbol. These are all the LaTeX symbol. For people who are already comfortable with the LaTeX, LaTeX is the document editing system where we extensively use for research paper writing, etc. There we use the LaTeX systems. So here I have just shown you some examples that yeah, you can see here. When you are adding, you can directly use the sigma itself. Sigma is equal to beta plus 100. Now I think I have to execute from here. So you can see here, as if like the normal variables what we are taking, these variables are also taking the content. Now how do we make a array? So making an array is also so easy. Just you put array name, and then you give the numbers one after another. This array name can be taken like this. So you have given a is equal to 50, 60, 70 like this that you have given. So this array also been taken. Now this is a simple function that we are building here, which is navigating through an array, and which is trying to find out the sum of all numbers in this array. Now what we are doing is, let's say, take here function, we are writing a function test. We are taking an array inside this function, and then we are initializing the sum variable. This is a self-explanatory thing. We are going from 1 to n. We are finding out the sum, and then we are printing the result. Why do I show this here is that I'll now show you how effectively or how quickly this function can be now run. Now this is one function. What we have done is we have just added what we have given it over here. Now let's see, we built some random numbers. Now I have built some random numbers. So 10 to the power 3 is like 1000 random numbers. If you want to build 1000 random numbers got built so quickly. Now if I want to build, if I want to add all these 1000 random numbers, how quickly this result is coming, you can see here. This result got came in a jiffy. Now this is 10 to the power 3. Now I want to go for 10 to the power 7. You see here how quickly the results are coming. In this you have to understand 10 to the power 7 random numbers got generated, and each of these random numbers got supplied to this function, and all the values are added and the result got printed. So how quickly now I have used here at time, which is an operator to find out like how quickly this result has come up. You can see here 0.0452 seconds. That means that it is so quick. Now even if you go to the 10 to the power 8, these are some of the things you have to understand. You can see that 10 to the power 8 random numbers that you have to generate. Generating a random number itself is a task, and you are generating random numbers like 10 to the power 8 random numbers that you are generating, and for each random number you are going to call that test function, and you are going to add that value, like all these numbers that are there in that thing that you are adding. So you can see here, this is also including 7.70% is something called the GC time. GC time is garbage collection time. After this, after doing this thing, Julia also has got a inbuilt garbage collector. For executing that also, it has taken only this much amount of time. I hope you are able to understand what I am trying to tell. You can yourself explore by trying to generate 10 to the power 8 random numbers in Python, and then try to pass it to a function like this and try to find out the result. You see how much time it is taking. I'm not telling that it is going to take much longer time, but it is just to show you that the number crunching when it comes to Julia, it is so very powerful that you can imagine that this much number of things, whatever that we are giving it over here, they are able to run it through so quickly without any problem. You also have got support for recursion also. Yes, here I have written a simple inliner function or one-liner function. So there you can see here I have written a Fibonacci series function. Fib of n is equal to that function that I have written. So if I want to generate the 10th Fibonacci number, just I call this thing. So if I want to generate the 8th Fibonacci number, and this is the thing. What I am trying to show is Julia is supporting recursion also. Here you can see this is the fib of function inside which we are calling this function also. N is less than 2, we are returning n. Otherwise, we are adding the existing the Fibonacci number program. Now you can see here is only one line to generate the nth Fibonacci number. Next, we come to the matrix operations. So matrices are the core of the mathematical computing these days, whether you are going with machine learning or anything. Primarily, it has got a huge amount of matrices. When it comes to Julia, Julia has got good matrix handling capabilities also. Here you can notice we are creating the matrices, and when we are building the matrices, it's like first row, second row, third row, like that we have given, and after each row we have put a semicolon. So here space is used for the inter number differentiator. Then we have got another matrix. So two matrices we have built here. I'll come back to this thing a bit later. So here we can add the matrix simply like we are adding the normal numbers. We can perform multiplications also. You can see here this is a matrix multiplication. Performing the transpose of the matrix is so easy. You can just perform the transpose of the matrix, inverse of the matrix. You can just call the inverse of the matrix like this. So determinant can also be find out using the linear algebra package. So you can see here 2636 is the determinant value of that particular function, rank of the matrix, etc. All these things, whatever that you do for matrices, eigenvalues, this is the eigenvectors. So for everything, now once you build the matrix, now you can see that it's like only one mini task. Now I am going to run something I'm going to create 1000 cross 1000 matrix, 2000 cross 1000 matrices, and we are going to print those multiplication of these two matrices. That is, we are going to create 1000 cross 1000 matrix. Each value will be filled with one random number, and the second matrix will also be 1000 cross 1000. Each location will be filled with one random number. So you have to build 1000 cross 1000 matrix, and then each location you need to build with a random number, and then you have to multiply these two matrices. Multiplication of the matrices, you know that it's always a time intensive task. You can see here, this is like it has built, and then it's multiplying these two matrices also. You can understand that how quickly our operations are coming up. So you can also generate the lower triangle of a particular matrix by going with this one. So this is try L, where we are going with this lower triangle of this particular matrix. Maybe this operation is I should not have given 1000 cross 1000. Maybe it's asking for too much, I guess. So this has created the lower triangle. You can also rotate. A matrix. So how do you want to rotate a matrix? Here we have given rotate right by 90 degrees. 2 times if you want to rotate, you have to give the value here. If you want to rotate 1 time, you have to just give 1 as the value that you want to rotate it here. So now what we have done is we have just rotated the matrix by 90 degree 1 time. So for all like this, there are a lot of operations are there. Rotate left 90 degree, rotate 90 degree, multiple times also you can rotate it. If you want to generate the sparse matrices, you can generate the sparse matrices also. This is what I was calling as the type neutral functions in Julia. That means once you design the function like this, it can be called with any of the data types. Now here you see f of x is equal to 4x cube plus 3x square plus 8 that I have defined. Now I want to find out the f of 5. Just I have given it like this, f of 5, 583. I can also give a floating point number also here. So this also has taken it up here. So this is about the type neutral function and the matrix thing. In between, I just skipped one thing, right? So what was there is you can also fill matrices that are like say you want to create a matrix of size to fill with particular zeros. You can build a zero matrix like this. So this will create a matrix of a particular size, and then it will fill up with the values also. Similarly, you can you can create matrices that are holding random numbers, Gaussian random number or unified random number. You can fill up matrices like this also. Now, I'm just running it quickly because I have to show you the demonstration on data frames and the visualization also. I will share this worksheet also with you so that you can also go in detail. Now, here somewhere here we just used something called using somewhere here. You can see here we used something called using linear algebra. In Julia, when we want to incorporate a package, we use this keyword called using. So whenever we want to include a package, we use this word using. So how do we add the package to the Julia is there is something called pkg.add, that is package.add. That's what I'm going to show you now. Now you can see here what are all the packages that are available in your system currently. You can see by checking pkg.status. You can see here these are all the packages which are already installed in this computer: CSV package, Cairo package, Gadfly, Julia. Gadfly is a visualization library, ImageMagick, plots, PyCall, or data stats like this. Now I will show you one example. So here you see you can also use import as well as you can also use using. Both are same only. So how do you add a package? Into your system is you need to say pkg.add. Suppose here I am trying to add a package PyCall. This package is already added, but now if I try to add, it will show you the current status what it is. So now it is trying to add that package. This package is already, I think it was available here. So it is trying to resolve the package versions. As we are running it from the Jupyter, and it is just trying to check what are all the packages that are available into this particular thing, and it is pre-compiling that project to see that whether PyCall is properly configured or not. Once PyCall is properly configured, now then it will be ready. So it is pre-compiling the project. I could have just skipped this thing because I have already done it. So now after we have done this, we can using PyCall. We can say now we can PyImport. That means that from Python, whatever is there now, we will be able to import. So now this one is like a Python import that we are now doing, Python math function. Then math.sign. This is now like the Python object what we are now getting it, and we are executing this code over here. You can see here like this. Now then we are going to come to Julia. Before we come to visualization in Julia, before I come to visualization in Julia, let me just go to the data frames here. So as far as data science is considered, it is all about handling the data from various different sources, right? So data frames is one of the packages that are there for handling in-memory tabular data in Julia. So when you want to handle in-memory tabular data, you are going with dataframes.jl. This dataframe.jl comes with a lot of options. So we are now going to go through what are all the options that dataframes.jl is there. As I already told to you, I have an article on this dataframe.jl also. I will share that article also with you. So let me just show you here. This is my dataframes article. So I will share this article also with you so that you can read it out when you are free. So now here we are just putting using package. Using package is for adding this one. So now I don't want to using package also. Package also I have commented. Any code in Julia can be commented by putting this hash here. So now I'm going for using data frames. So how do we build a data frame? What is a data frame actually? A data frame is a tabular data. It represents a series of vectors, and each of these vectors represent a column. And it is the easiest way to build a data frame is to just give each of these columns and then their corresponding values. Now you can see here I am trying to build a data frame. Data frame is equal df is equal to data frame of first column is like a, that I am giving a number, and then I am filling in the value from 1 to 5. Then the next column we are giving the name b, then we are filling with m, f, maybe male, female, something like that. So let's build this data frame. Now we have built this data frame. So you can see here the first row, the first column, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the second column, it is having a string where it is showing m, f, whatever that we are giving it over here. You can specifically show a specific column. You can show it here like this. You can show a specific column. You can also show the names of all columns like this. All the column names will be shown here. Here you are having A as one column, B as another column. These two column names have been shown here. So we can show the column names also here. Then we can see here we can also pass single values to the columns. How we can say, for example, now I want to build a 2-column data table in which the first column, for each row I want the same value. Say for example this one, as I said, I wrote it for Open Source for You magazine. So this is magazine, as magazine will be the first column. Second column will be theme. What will be the theme of each month? So first column OSFI, which is Open Source for You, it has to repeat for each row the same value. In the second column, you can have different values that has to come, like mobile, cloud, top 10, web, like that it has to come. So how do we build that is, we can simply give the syntax like this, and if you build it like this, you can see here, now the first column for all the rows, the same value OSFI has come. Then for the second column, you can notice here the different values what we have given over here, those values are there. So we can add single value to the columns also. Similarly, we can also add individual columns as well. Now you can individual columns also can be added. Columns can be added individually also. Here you can see. We can see here df.month id 1 to 12, df.month name. So like that we can individually give the column names, and the columns can be individually added also. You can also fetch the row. Data frame can be built row by row manner also. So how do we build the data frame using row by row manner? We just create a data frame first. and then we can, here you see D frame is equal to data frame of first thing will be integer, second thing will be string. So we are pushing one by one row into the data frame. Finally, we are printing the data frame. You can notice here the first row will be January, second row will be February. So like that, you can handle the data frame. Data frames will be very effective when you are using your data to show it in the form of visualization, or when you are performing some machine learning task, etc., where you will be using the data frame. You might have studied about Panda in the Python. So similarly here, we are going with the data frames.jl. You can populate the data frames. You can populate the data frames in a random manner also. Whatever the data frame values are there that you want to populate it in a random way, so you can populate it. So here I have given data frame random of 3, 2 auto. So you can see here this value that we have populated. 3 rows, 2 columns. Automatically, it's converting from matrix into data frames. The column names will be automatic, x1, x2 that we have given over here. That's why we have given here this colon auto. This is the random values that we have picked up for populating this particular data frame. This is 3 by 2 data frame of random of 3 by 2 colon auto. So we have given here the print function. We can also copy and compare the data frame. One data frame can be copied to another data frame. You can see here data frame 1 is equal to data frame of first data frame. The A value will be 1 to 5. B value, say for example PT, something like that we have given. So this is showing us true because this is the second value from P to T. That's why it is coming like P, Q, R, S, T, something like that. You can notice here we have given one data frame df1, second data frame df2. The point is that we can compare the data frame with the help of a is equal function. Suppose if you have large data frames, their values can be compared very easily by simply putting them through the is equal function. You can just put them through is equal, and then you can say df1, df2. If all the values are the same, then it will be returning true. Otherwise, it will be returning false. So like that, you will be able to perform the comparison operation of the data frames as well. Then how do you generate the summary statistics? So summary statistics that includes mean, minimum, median, maximum, all these things, a number of unique values, number of missing values, data type, all these things they come under the summary statistics for a data frame. A summary statistics for the data frame can be generated with the help of a describe function. You can see here we have a describe function. So when we give the input to the describe function, so it will be describing that corresponding thing. You can see here. You can see here now we have got data frame, and then we have find out the mean, minimum, median, maximum, and missing. If you are trying to understand, if you are finding it difficult to understand, you can just give whatever columns that are required. Only for those columns that you can describe, and you can generate the summary statistics for those things also. You can see here describe df of columns 1, 2. That means that now we have taken only columns 1 and 2, and for that we are giving the describe thing. We are giving it here describe df columns 1 and 2. For columns 1 and 2, it has generated mean, minimum, median, maximum, missing, all these things it has actually got generated. What is the data type it is belonging to? That also is showing it here. In the data frame, when you are having large number of rows are there, if you want to select only the first few rows, then what you can do is you can just give first of as one of the function, and you can supply how many number of rows that you need in that particular data frame, that you can generate it over here. So like that, you can also generate you can also show the first 10 rows from the data frame. You can generate it like this. Here you can see we are generating a 5,000 row matrix with the 8 columns. You can see here there are 5,000 rows are there. 5,000 rows are there. 8 columns are there. So in this x1, x2, x8, and each of these cells we are going to fill a random value between 5 and 15. That is what we have given over here. what is why this auto is given over here is this random is going to generate a matrix, and this matrix is going to be converted into a data frame, and for that the column names that we are going to give automatically. So for that we have been giving here colon auto. So here it has generated this many number of columns. You can notice here, suppose if I give here only 3, the first 3 columns are going to come. So sorry, first 3 rows are only going to come. Similarly, you can also generate it for the last how many number of rows that you want. That can also generate it. You can see here, now here we are generated the last 3 rows. When you are handling large data sets, what is going to happen is you will be having large number of elements into this I say into a data set or into a data frame. So in that when you want to view, you can't display everything into one screen. So if you display everything into one shot, it might not be very easy for you to focus it also. So that you can just generate just display first few values or the last few values, like that you will be able to generate. So specific columns can also be built out. Now you can see here, it has generated we are only generating the values, I mean only showing the columns from x2 to x4. That means we are having x2, x3, x4. Between x2 and x4, whatever values are there, that values that we are generating now. You can retrieve specific rows and columns with the following syntax. So for row 4, 6, 7, column x2 and x4, like that you will be able to generate very specific, get very specific values also. What is the point that I am trying to tell you is, the data frames.jl gives you all sorts of ability to handle the in-memory data structure, in-memory representation of your data in the form of a tabular structure. There you will be able to do it so effectively. Then another operation that we will be requiring more often than not is about the grouping. Suppose now I have here something like this. For month I have one column, for sales I have one column, and then we have got a v, which is a random value of 8. For this, now what we are going to do is we want to put up a group by function. Here you can see here we are putting a group by function, and for this data frame df, on month you just group by this value. For month you can see here 1, 2, again 1 is coming, 2, 3, 1 is coming here. That means that when you run it here, you can show group by value here. Now you can see all these values are grouped by the last 2 rows also. They are grouped by, since there are a lot of rows in the Jupyter, it is truncating that values. You can also putting a loop, you can also navigate that thing. You can also sort also, you can see here for sorting. For the same thing, after group by you can also sort, and in that you want to omit the missing values, you can simply give skip missing. Handling the missing value is one of the important tasks in the data frame that we will be able to handle. So we will be able to see it here. You can see it here what we have done it here. So we have given here group by, and then we have given here the sort value, and then skip missing is equal to true. That also we have given it over here. Next thing that we are going to see is how do we read from the CSV file. See here I have got one CSV file, programming languages.csv. So let me just show you this thing. So here is one data set which is about the programming languages.csv. Inside this programming languages.csv, it has got all the programming languages sorted by the year. So from the year 1951 to what are all the things that are coming up over here. This is a CSV file. So loading a CSV file is so easy in Julia. Just you have to see using CSV, and then csv.read. This is the name of the file which you want to load. Here I have given the file name as pl.csv, and from this pl.csv you are directly populating a data frame. So that data frame we are getting it as a data frame. So this will be shown into the data frame. Now you can see here type of C is data frame, because this is generated like a data frame. So here I have been giving 1 to 15. So that's why it is showing 1 to 15. Let's so you can see here now it is showing only 1 to 5. So we are able to show it here also. So we have taken it from here as well. The we have opened a CSV file. Actually, in Julia, there are two ways of handling the delimited files. One is called the delimited file. There is one approach in which what you can do is you can open any delimited file, like a file delimited by a comma, or a file delimited by a hyphen, or a file delimited by colon, something like that. So for that, you need to go for a delimited file handling mechanism. But if you are very clear that if your file is only a CSV file and it is not delimited by anything else, if you can get optimal performance when you go for this CSV package. So when you go for the CSV package, you can read this file so quickly by simply using one function. You just put csv.read, that particular file name that you have given and the data frame that you have given, and then you can load this into the C value. So that also can be taken into a data frame, and there all the operations whatever that you want to perform, that can be performed. You can see here now we have given names of C. There are two columns are there. One is year, another one is language. Which year that language got invented, and what is the name of that language. This is a language data set which is there locally in my system. So you can that's why we are directly giving it over here. Otherwise, if you want to get some file from the get some file from the internet resource, there is one library called download. So you can just using download, and then you can give that URL that the file will be downloaded locally. Then you can read it with the csv.read. As this file is currently there in my system itself, so I have directly given it here like this. So then we can also perform join also. Like in databases, you will be performing join, right? There will be two tables. On two tables, you will be performing join. Julia provides a database style join on data frames also. That is also a very significant operation that the Julia provides. I will say here you see we are having foods as one of the array that we are having it here, and the second array that we are having it here as calories, and another one is prices. Now we create one data frame calories, where we take item is equal to food. We are going to create two columns in this. The first column will be food. Second column will be first column will be item. In that column, we are going to take food. Second column will be calories, and for the calories, we are going to take this array. And we are building a second data frame. And in that second data frame, that will be prices, where we will be having food, and then we will be building the prices also. What we are doing is we are first building two data frames. In one data frame, food is there and its associated calorie is there. In another data frame, we have got food and its associated price is there. Now you can see here, you can perform an inner join by just calling inner join of. Inner join, you will be knowing that inner join works when the values are available in both the things. You can see here. Now we have performed a inner join on both these columns. You can both these data frames. You can see here the first one item, second one calories, third one prices. On what? On item, because item was available in both these data frames. Here also item was available. Here also item is available. So based on this, we are going with the join. So not only this inner join, data frames supports various different types of joins that are there. You can see here inner join, where the output will be depending on contains rows for values of the key that exist in all the past data frame. If it is available in all the data frames, then only inner join is going to work. Similarly, you have got a left join. In left join, it is available in the first one, and whether it is not available in the second one or not doesn't matter. Left means the first argument. It should be available in the first argument. In the second argument, whether it is available or not doesn't matter. It will be automatically taking. For people who have studied databases, they will be knowing that all these different type of joins are there in databases also. Inner join, left join, right join, outer join. So for all these things, there are directly functions are there. Like you can take a data frame and then you can apply various different joins also on it. So cross join will be like a Cartesian joining of both these things, both these values. So this is about the data frame. Then as I said, we will now again go back to our visualization mechanism, what we have been talking about. Now, first I introduced you to the Julia programming construct. Then we went into data frame, how we are going to handle the tabular data in Julia. Now we are coming to the visualization, how we are going to create various different plots in Julia. What kind of plots that we are going to make in Julia. For that, there are two different things that we are going to see now. The first one is something called plots, and the second one is called Gadfly. Using both these things that we are going to see. For Gadfly again, I have an article on Gadfly also. This also I will share with you so that you can go through it in detail when you have time. So first we have put using plots. Now this one I don't want to run because we have already added the package plots. Now we are going using plots. So suppose I want to create a line plot like this. So for x values from 1 to 10, y value will be random of 10. We want to create a plot. So it's creating a plot here. So let's try to. You can also see here the label has also come up over here. So creating a plot, just you are going to say using plots. That's it. What is going to come on the x value? What is going to come on the y value? Just to call plots.plot. Actually, even this plots dot is also not required. You can simply call plot itself. Why I have used plots.plot here is, I will show you down in the slide. We have also used Gadfly for visualization. This is a simple plot that we are creating. Down, I'm going to show you how do we create the same plots using Gadfly. Gadfly is a package that enables you to create a production quality charts. What I mean by production quality chart is, I'll explain you when I come to that point. So you can add attributes also, like you can add more lines and you can also add attributes also. Now you can see here, x value will be 1 to 10, y value will be random of 10, 2 columns. First we are plotting x, y. Title will be two lines here. Label will be line 1, line 2, line 1, line 2. Line width will be 3. The width of this line is given as 3. So most of these things are self-explanatory when you see the code. See, Julia is able to achieve the performance, as I already explained, without compromising on the clarity of the code. If somebody tells you like this is Python code, you are going to believe. Like, okay, this looks like a script type of a thing only. So more or less look like that code itself. So it is not that you are going to write a C style code here. Then we can also add the axis labels also for x axis and for y axis. Here we have put x label. Similarly, we can add the y label also. Here we have put y values. We have put x values, like that. Here in this chart, we built the we have built the line chart. Then how do we build the scatter plot? Is we can build the series type as scatter. You can see here the scatter plot is actually built. So we have given the title here. We have given plots.plot series type equal to scatter. So that we have given it here. Then the scatter plot is built. We can also add subplots also. Like here you can see, first I am creating a plot, a line plot. Second, I am creating a scatter plot. What is there in x and y? There are some random values, like from 1 to 10. X is having 1 to 10, and then y is having some random values between 1 to 10. So first I am building a plot, line plot. Then I am building a scatter plot. Then you can see we are building a labeled plot with a subtitle. Then we are building a histogram. Finally, we want to combine all these things together into one plot. Now this is what happens here. Now you can see here all these four charts, they have got built together, and then these are all the subgraphs which got built inside. And here you can also build a subtitle over here. If you want to show what each individual legends are there, you can give it over there, and then we can also give the layout. Here we have given the layout as 2,2. That means 2,2 places. This chart has been built in a 2,2 matrix fashion. So like this, you can create subplots with the help of this plots dot plot. Any number of plots can be added to it. So in research papers and all, you might have seen more than one graph will be put in one image, and then all those graphs, all those parts will be there inside that particular. All those charts will be there inside one particular chart. There and all, you can use this type of charting mechanism. Then we can use a data set, and using the data set again we can put a plot. Now here I will just see whether I have put package.add. Here I have used a package called R datasets. So here we don't want to go with adding because I already added. We have given here using R dataset. We are loading the dataset iris, and then we are using one package called statsplat. Using this dataset, whatever that we have loaded, with this dataset we are going to use this dataset. We are going to use this dataset along with this stat plot. You can see here we are creating a scatter plot with all these values. Now the outcome you can notice here. This is the scatter plot what it got generated from the iris dataset. So this plotting is like very much configurable, and you can see here just we loaded the data from the data set, and what has to be loaded. This is between sepal length and the sepal width. Grouping will be based on the species. Then we have given the title, label that we have given, and the corresponding things, whatever kind of symbols that we have come here, that also we have given. And the background color, what do we need to give, that also we have given it over here. So this is how these charts are built. Then you can also create some advanced level diagrams, like if you are writing research papers, etc., where you want to show some violin plot, box plot, etc., you can build those plots also. So for building a violin plot, say I have just taken a random 4 series of 100 points each, random number. So that one just we have built it like a violin plot. This you might have seen when you are having a group of values and show their distribution, how those values are distributed. For that you can use the violin chart. So for building the violin chart, just you have to give simply violin, and then series names that you have given here: series 1, series 2, series 3, series 4. Then all the 4 series is what we have given as the value that we have given over there. What is this legend is? Leg is equal to fall is legend. If you want the legend to be shown here, you can just put here legend is equal to true. Then the legend will also be shown here. So building a violin plot, just you call the violin function, violin plot is ready. Then you can also build a box plot. Box plot is another version here, where the quantile wise, like the first quantile, second quantile, likewise you can split like first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant values, how they are distributed like this. The values, how they are distributed. For showing that, you can build the box plot. So box plot and violin plot are very much used by the research scholars in their research papers when they want to show the distribution of the values. How, say, suppose you are getting some user rating for your study in some mechanism, how these values are distributed, whether they are all around the median region, or there are a lot of outliers, etc. Those things can be generated. And again, the statistics people, they might be knowing that there is something called correlation plot. How one value is correlated to another value in a data set. Say for example, we have taken 4 values here: sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and among all these 4 values, how each of these values correlated against other things. There we are going to create this chart here. You can see here sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width. Here again you have the petal width, petal length, like that you have got various different things. So how they are correlated, that we can build with a correlation plot. You can see here we can build with a correlation plot like this. As I said earlier, we can also use another package which is called Gadfly. Gadfly is a package for building production quality graphs. That is, suppose if you want to create a graph and you want to print that thing, when you are sending it to some research papers, etc., they will ask you that your image is not having the proper resolution for printing, etc. There, in that case, you can create an SVG type charts with the help of Gadfly. So Gadfly offer 20 plus plotting types. 20 plus plotting types are there in Gadfly. The major features are like, so I have already added the Gadfly. Let's see here. Just let's take some, let's reduce it to 100. So we are putting a point chart of 100 by 100 values. So you have created a 100 by 100 random value chart. You can see that first time it took some time because the code is getting compiled. The second time onwards, it is coming very quickly. It is not the same chart because it's a random values. Of course, random values we generated earlier. So you can see that scatter chart in the plot. The point chart is getting created with the help of the Gadfly.plot. We have given the x values, y values, and the genome.point. Here we are creating genome.point plot. Just we have given genome.point plot that we have given here. Similarly, when you want a line chart, the same thing. Just we have to give the line as the example. So then the line chart will be built. This line can be converted into a smooth line. This smooth line chart, when you want to build, you have to give the same thing. So finally, here what we are doing is we are going to print the point and then smooth that we are going to give. So if you see, if we give smooth, what happens? You can see here the line is coming like a smoother line now rather than the sharp line what has been shown over here. This is for line fitting, etc. Where you want to show a smooth line graph, you can create a smooth chart also. Similarly, you can build histograms with the R data set. The histograms are about like how many values in each of the bins. So this is the histograms that we have built for this thing. So under 10 value, how many values are coming? Under 20, how many values are coming? Like that, if you put bin by bin, then that kind of value is what we call it as, that kind of chart is what we call it as the histogram chart. Similarly, we can build a multi-layer plot also. What is a multi-layer plot is? Multi-layer plot is, in the same plot, if I want to build a point plot as well as the line plot, here I have built a point plot and as the line plot, and we give the order of the first plot as 1 and the second plot as 2. In the same chart itself, now you can see that two plots have come over here, the first plot and then the second plot, both of them have come up over here. So like this, you will be able to create the multi-layered chart, etc. As I already said, the Gadfly enables you to save it into a SVG file and save it into a PDF file also. Now this plot that you are building and then you want to save it into a plot file, into the SVG file or the PDF file. You can see here now I have executed this code, and let me show you where this one is stored. I would have opened the tab somewhere. Downloads. So I have to come to that, yeah, I have to come to this folder. So you can see here that plot, whatever that we generated, this point plot, this is the plot that got generated. Now it has been saved as a PDF file over here. You can see here how much I zoom, this file's quality is like retaining the same, right? So that is the kind of output that the Gadfly creates. Gadfly's tagline itself is, it is creating production quality, print quality outcome that you will be able to generate with the help of the with the help of this particular thing. Next thing is, as someone has asked about images, so I have one example where I can show you a machine learning based classification using some image classification thing. So let's show you here. So here, Julia has got lot of abilities for doing the machine learning based task also. For our current purpose, what we are going to do is we are going to use machine learning package called Metalhead from Julia, which is coming under the Flux library. So I'm just putting it here, Metalhead. So how I am going to go for a image classification is, so just I say Metalhead : classify. I'm just calling it from classify. Then we load a VGG19 model here. It supports Metalhead supports lot of other models also. Here we have taken the VGG19 model. People who are working with the images, they will be knowing that what is VGG. So here, since we are going to handle the image IO, I think already ImageMagick is added. So I'm going to load an image. So here, this is the elephant image that I am loading it here. This image is there in my local system, ele.jpg. You can see here. This is the image that I have loaded here. Suppose I want my classifier to describe what it is. So here, I'm describing this image. So it shows that African elephant and its name is also coming, Loxodonta africana, something like that. So this is like how to load an image. For loading an image, we have got this ImageMagick package. So we can add an ImageMagick package, and we can also perform image IO, through which we can handle the images. Then through that we can load any image using load of function, which is there in the ImageMagick and the image IO. Then you can give the classification. Let us try giving some other image and see how it looks like. And maybe I had another image here. Yeah. So what is the type of image that one is? This image. Okay, this is also JPG image. So let me give here c.jpg. So let's load this. So we have loaded a C image or a C SOAR image. Let's see what this classifier says, what it is. So this is saying C SOAR coast, C coast, something like that. So now you can see how easy it is to build a image classifier into this Julia package. Just you have to add this Metalhead as the I can just show you here. For people who are interested in the image manipulation using Julia or the machine learning based things in Julia, you can just go to here, Flux Julia, the Julia machine learning library Flux. So you can easily see here there are n number of things that you will be able to do in the you can do the predictive training, everything that whatever that you want, everything you will be able to perform with the thing here. I can also show you the Flux Metalhead. So this is for computer vision models using Flux. You can see 17 hours ago there was some update over there. This is the Metalhead. So it supports all these different type of models that are there, whether it is ResNet or GoogleNet or Inception, DenseNet, SqueezeNet. All these models are supported by this thing. So you can surely explore. So what is my intention is, my intention was not to show you every feature of Julia, which is ultimately not possible in the limited time that has been given. It is only to show you an interest that you can explore this new programming language which has come up, which is again can perform the same task with the level of the the program is identifying the contents of the image, correct? Yeah, Munna Kumar has asked, program is identifying the contents of the image, yes. So this is a computer vision model. This is the image identification. They are doing the identification of the images. So this is what is I thought of telling you about Julia. There are plenty of things that are there. There are a lot of resources are there. I can show you. I can also give you some of the links from where you can. There is one popular GitHub repository where there is a thing called I Love Julia. This thing. So from here, what you can do is they have got lots and lots of examples loaded, which you can directly run from their source itself. You can see here their packages, what they have given, whatever the examples that they have given over here. Let me open a flux example or a differential equation example, or let me open a flux example. So here, oops. So let us open something else. Maybe they are updating or something. So this resource is very good. Yesterday also I checked this resource. It was able to give me a lot of solutions. Okay. Okay, this will be fine. So you can see here. This is the fall in love with Julia GitHub repository. The best part is they have already given a binder here. You can see here the binder, which you can directly launch from here. Now this binder is launching. So whatever they have over there through this binder, you can execute it directly over there. So this kind of things you can get started with the things so easily without much of the learning curve by directly opening the contents like this. There are plenty of other resources also there. So I can also share you some of the resources. As I said, these are all the articles that are there, and similarly there are books are also there on Julia. There are it is now becoming so popular that over another 2-3 years you can see that many places people will start talking, particularly about in people from statistics, people from machine learning groups. They will start talking about a new programming language. As this workshop, you have also got an introduction to this. Introduction to an upcoming technology. As I want to conclude it like this, I want to say that it is not a competition between the Julia and the Python. It is not Python versus Julia, because many a times in forums it gets understood in that way. It is not. It is not in that way actually. It is about how Julia is going to co-work along with the. This is the deep learning example what they have given over here. All these things you can directly run it from here itself. So you don't need to install anything. So with their binder, all the libraries, environments, everything is already loaded. So you can try it out all the things from here. This link is what I have shared. Rather, I will share you this link. So this will be even better. Happen to everyone. It from somewhere. Everyone, ed. So why this everyone is missing now? I'll just select here. So we'll just see it here. So this is what I want thought of telling you. So hope you might have got something out of this session. So I will also share the materials with you. Do you have any questions?
Participants, do you have any questions?
I can also share you my. So Munna Kumar want to download the image of the laptop. Okay, so let us try that. What it says. See, the image recognition program is not a. It's not a. It's not an omnipresent solution. Whether it will work or not, let me see. So which one we will show? This one, this one, this one. Which one is a better looking laptop? So third one. This one. Let us take. Let's take this one. Save images. downloads. So where is our program? Oh, where did it went? I closed. Yes, here it is. Let's see what it does. I am not sure for all the images it will find the correct thing. What was that image? PNG, right? So let us first load this image. So we have loaded this image. Classify this image. So this is selling face powder. I don't know from which angle this is identified this as a face powder. I don't know. So sometimes this classification models, this is still an unsolved problem actually. My intention was not to show you that we have cracked. In fact, one of my research scholar who is there in this group, he is working on his research problem on finding out what is there inside an image. So this is only one way of doing the thing. We have been using the VGG model. Instead of VGG, we can try changing to something else and then see how does it looks like. Let's try with some other laptop. And this is too much injustice that they have done. Yeah. So maybe this one we will take. Yeah, this is also having some sort of confusions. So I want to take a. Let us take this one. From no angle, this is showing like. One minute, just a minute. So let us see here lap1 dot, that was a JPG file, right? So let's run this JPG file. So this is looking multiple colors. I don't know what it is going to tell. So expect any answer. It is telling notebook computer. So success. So Munna Kumar, you can be happy that it is telling. Yeah, every time we run, it is like a thriller story only that we are watching what it is going to tell. I am not vouching that program, 3-line program, what I have showed you is a complete image description program. If that is the case, my scholar Balayogi cannot continue his research because this problem is already solved. So he is trying to crack on that problem. So yeah, so this is how it's been working. So thank you very much for patiently listening to me. I hope all of you would have got something out of my talk, and hope some of you will pick up further on continuing with the Julia programming, and hope some of you will become Julia programming experts in your by applying it in your projects, etc. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the participants?
Ma'am, you were listening. I didn't know, ma'am, you are still here. I thought you have left the.
Oh, no, it's a very good introduction actually for me. I have to especially thank that. So I have a small clarification.
Yes,
It did that database, the join operation and all those
Yeah.
things. Whether for cataloging, can we use like reference catalog, what Zotero did? Like that, can we develop any package or anything for that
Yeah,
kind of
we can
application?
think in that way also, ma'am. We can think in that way also, because it is also doing a kind of join operations only, no?
No, that's my question is whether using this Julia, can I write something like for my reference cataloging, I would like to develop some application, whether this is an app language.
Yeah, it will be an app language, ma'am, because where we are going to handle multiple series of data, it will be like certainly more suitable for that kind of a scenario. As you are saying, references, more and more references get added. If we go with the traditional languages,
Like
the
Zotero,
speed will get reduced. So when we go with Julia will be consistently maintaining that speed if even more and more data comes into the picture.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Actually, that Viral sir, who is the founder of this project, he was working with Aadhaar project also, it seems, ma'am. So for whatever the Aadhaar that we are having, so maybe they might have got a clues from this implementations also. So Viral sir is an Indian, so he has got lot of contributions to Julia. So yesterday when I checked, they have bagged a huge funding from some corporates, some $24 million something.
From
Some
India.
funding has come for Julia.
From India or
No,
all
not
over
from
the-
India. They are working from MIT only, ma'am. This Viralsa is an Indian, but this language is not an Indian language that we can claim. We can only claim that okay, one Indian was there
Indian
as,
is
as one of the
associated
founding author of this particular language. Otherwise, it is like from MIT only they have done it.
So participants, if you have any queries, you please ask. Otherwise, we will
Yeah.
that is conclude the
I
session.
didn't know madam is listening, so I forgot to thank
No,
madam. So
it
thank
was,
you very much.
no. It was
Thank you,
too
ma'am.
good.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to a lot of interruptions for me. As far as possible, I tried to listen to the session. It was a good introduction, and that what one time we thought that according to your presentation, oh, only Julia is going to take over the whole
Yeah,
world.
yeah. No, that's what
Initially,
I said. It is not
I thought
marketing
you are
on.
going to
Yeah.
no, you're going to show a girl picture named Julia.
Yeah.
But
No,
I was so upset you did not show any picture of
yeah. Actually,
Julia.
if I have simply said I love Julia, if people search on different images will come, you have to restrict yourself only to click on the required link. So if you fall on some other link, I am not responsible for that. And by
Okay,
the way, there is no reason. There is no reason for. I thought somebody will ask you that question. Ask me that question. Why they have named the language as Julia? The authors have been posed with this question, and they have collectively said there is no reason for this thing. We just like that have kept it. Maybe there is a personal
Alexa.
reason or something
Like
like Alexa, like Julia.
Yeah, there is no reason, no.
Maybe
Why we named it as Alexa?
Java, yeah, J8 start with the Julia, Java, sounding very similar. Maybe they might have thought something like that, or there may be some personal reasons also. We do not know. So that is into their story.
Fine. Habiba,
Thank you,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you for giving this opportunity, and thank you for the NIT Pondicherry for giving me this opportunity to interact with all the participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for making us aware of the language Julia. It was so informative and learnt new things. And sir, you made us to look forward to learn more on this language Julia and the upcoming technologies. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, please all switch on the cameras for a photo session. Participants, please switch on your cameras. Thank you. Wait, sir, I'll take a snap. Yes, thank you. I took, ma'am.
Okay. So you share that snap to me also.
Yes, sir, sure, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. So at least now I can see that all of you are really behind that screen. So at one point in time, it feels like we are talking to nobody.
That is the advantage and disadvantage of this online, okay?
Yeah.
At one
They are
point
at the
in
comfort
time,
of
we
their
do
home,
not
so
know
that is an
anybody is
advantage.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear participants, all of you, please join for the valedictory session at 2:30. And if time is there, I request Dr. S. Kupswamy also to join if possible for the valedictory function at
எத்தனை மணிக்கு, ma'am?
2:30, just 2:30, half an hour.
30. Okay.
And the same link,
Okay, ma'am.
if we will break the session now, we will join again at 2:30. Thank you.